Now, as marketing intelligence, David, you put up a lot of figures from today's conference. One is the milk price position. Can you outline that?
Absolutely. Well, there's certainly lots of good news out there for farmers at the minute, because when we look at dairy commodity markets, both in terms of UK and European and even world prices, what we're seeing at the minute is prices are very high, and they're probably at the levels close to they were in 2007, where there was the commodity market boom. Perhaps what we aren't seeing is those prices returning back to farmers in the same way. So there's quite a gap between returns on the commodity markets, which, if you take AMPI as an example, which is a measure of the returns for producing milk into butter and powder, that's currently around about 32 pence, whereas the farm gate price is around 26 pence. So there's a bit of a disconnect in the market at the minute for a variety of reasons, and what we try to do is get information out there to farmers so they can negotiate a good price for their milk.
Now, I don't want you to get in a sort of a supermarket price wars argument, but you put up another figure that showed the increase supermarkets have enjoyed over the last decade. Who do you think's really earning that money?
Okay, yeah, certainly in terms of looking at the margins for different players in the supply chain, over the last 10 years we've seen an increase in the retail selling price of milk. I think it's gone up from around about 42 pence to about 65 pence over the last 10 years. Farmers have seen a slight increase in their price over that time, but it's certainly the retailers that have profited most, shall we say. So their gross margin has increased from 20% to about 32%. So they've profited a lot from changes in the supply chain over that time. It's not for us to say whether that's good or bad, and certainly what we don't do is look at the cost of production and the cost of retailing, but certainly the changes are perhaps evidence of the power supermarkets do have in the supply chain.
That brings us in turn to the situation of people wanting to stay in the industry. You pointed out your background wasn't from the industry, and there's two aspects that you were quite surprised about, wasn't there, that link into that milk price issue?
Absolutely. I think for me that the key thing for the industry going forward is that farmers are able to make a decent return in order that they can invest in the future, because we tend to see about 5% of dairy farmers going out of business each year. So it's vital for those farmers that remain that they get the returns in order to invest and grow their businesses going forward to make up for that loss of milk. I'm not from a dairy background, and one of the things which surprised me was just the sheer hours worked by the average dairy farmer. So our farmer intention survey showed that dairy farmers work, or most dairy farmers work over 60 hours a week, and average salaries are only around about £20,000. Now, from a non-dairy background, that's quite surprising, and I don't know how sustainable that is in the long term. So ensuring farmers are getting a decent return is really a key issue for the future of the industry.
So it's a bit of a mixed bag. We've got positives in that the market is growing, milk price is showing upward trend.
Absolutely. In many ways there is a disconnect there, because you're right, there's lots of positives. We hear about global population growth, we know about these growing demands, particularly in the Far East, but also in parts of the Middle East and Africa, where there's a massive growth in demand for dairy products, and the UK is really well placed to meet some of those demands because we're in an ideal climate for dairy production. Perhaps what isn't working so well is this link between those commodity markets and the returns farmers are getting, and some of the things we would like to see are some intervention really in terms of issues like contracts. So if you look at contracts, most contracts don't specify what price will be paid or even the mechanism of which price will be set. So sorting out some of those issues will give dairy farmers a bit more certainty around the returns they're going to make, and therefore be able to make good investment decisions going forward.
David, thank you very much. We'll grab some of the other speakers now.
Thank you.